Welcome to another episode, all. In this episode, I'll be sharing a theory about what autism is with evidence and studies to back up my claims. When I first began studying autism, I encountered something called the Triad of Impairments by Lorna Wing. The claim that all autistic people have deficits in social communication, social interaction, and social imagination. At first, I believed these claims as they aligned with my experiences. In 2004, I was transferred to a special education school where there were other autistic people, and my beliefs were changed. The teachers at school kept describing me as greatly social, so I began to question the triad of impairments and my new experiences. I first of all remembered communication and interaction is a two-way street, a mutual responsibility. Secondly, I remembered my dad telling me people get along better with people they have more in common with. So it came to my mind that what if that is why I am so social at school? Because I have autism in common with these other people. I recalled people at mainstream school couldn't understand me either. So I came to the theory autistic people get along fine with other autistic people, non-autistic people get along better with other non-autistic people, and we only see communication problems when it's autistic people and non-autistic people communicating because of less similarity. Fortunately, in 2012, someone called Dr. Damian Milton, an autism researcher, proposed what he called the double empathy problem, which is basically what my relationships with autistic and non-autistic people showed. Damian Milton said, I quote, "The theory of the double empathy problem suggests that when people with very different experiences of the world interact with one another, they will struggle to empathise with each other. This is likely to be exacerbated through differences in language use and comprehension. I first started to publish theoretical accounts of this issue in the early 2010s. Yet, similar ideas can be found in the work of Luke Bearden regarding cross-neurological theory of mind, and in that of the philosopher Ian Hacking. More recently, research by Elisabeth Shepherd and team at the University of Nottingham, Brett Heisman at the London School of Economics, and Noah Sasson at the University of Texas at Dallas have shown that in experimental conditions, non-autistic people struggled to read the emotions of autistic participants or form negative first impressions of autistic people. Such evidence would suggest that the dominant psychological theories of autism are partial explanations." End of quote. So basically, non-autistic people are just playing the bandwagon fallacy, placing all the blame on the autistic people concerning communication, just because there's fewer. So, by the looks of it, they don't want to take responsibility for their own misunderstandings of autistic people. So they place the blame on the minority, claiming it's all to do with deficits. Dr. Damian Milton also wrote, I quote, "Whilst it is true that autistic people can struggle to process and understand the intentions of others within social interactions, when one listens to the accounts of autistic people, one could say such problems are in both directions. Theory of autistic minds often seem to leave a lot to be desired, and we would not need organisations like the National Autistic Society trying to spread awareness and understanding of autism if it was so easy to emphasise with autistic ways of perceiving and being in the world. From the earliest written accounts of autistic people, one can see numerous mentions of this lack of understanding from others. It is this issue of empathy problems between autistic and non-autistic people being mutual in character that led to the development of the double empathy problem as a theory." End of quote. Someone called Dr. Karin Crompton and her team investigated the double empathy problem. Dr. Karin Crompton says, I quote, Why might autistic people find it easier to understand other autistic people? Research indicates that autistic people are less likely to rely on typical social expectations for interacting, or be upset if such expectations are not followed. This means that autistic people give each other more freedom to express themselves in unique ways. We can see evidence of this by looking at how well autistic and non-autistic people share information with each other. One recent study was based on the game telephone, in which one person whispers a message to another person, who then whispers it to the next person, and so on. The last person then says the message out loud to see how different it is from what the first person said. Researchers compared how accurately groups of autistic people, groups of non-autistic people, and groups with a mix of autistic and non-autistic people shared a story in a game of telephone. They found that autistic groups share information just as accurately as non-autistic groups. Mixed groups of autistic and non-autistic people were much less accurate. This shows that autistic people are just as able to share information as non-autistic people if they are with other autistic people. This supports the theory of the double empathy problem, that there is a two-way difficulty when autistic and non-autistic people interact. End of quote. Once I found out my thoughts were correct, I stopped believing in the triad of impairments and noticed that the triad of impairments came from an ableist assumption. There's many people claim that anti-ableism hinders science, but there's actually more evidence that ableism is what hinders science, like the triad of impairments, just placing all the blame on the autistic people. I then began looking for a common denominator among autistic people. After reading numerous accounts by autistic people, I saw a common denominator of authenticity. That autistic people live as their authentic self, less susceptible to peer pressure. Applied behaviour analysis is compliance-based. The individuals who are forced to comply get rising levels of stress and anxiety for pretending to be someone they are not. But non-autistic people tend to unconsciously comply when out in society. So unconsciously, and stress and anxiety reduces. So autistic people tend to go in the opposite direction when it comes to conformity. Then when I assessed the behaviours of autistic people, they were all linked to authenticity, such as being bluntly honest is sharing their authentic opinion instead of white lies. In one investigation, Dr. Crompton interviewed autistic individuals about their relationships with autistic and non-autistic people. She found that, when with other autistic people, participants felt they did not have to conceal overly autistic aspects of their behaviour or communication style as they would have around non-autistic friends and family. I can be totally relaxed and totally myself. Anything goes. Participant 5. Behaviours such as stimming, rocking, and communicating in autistic ways were implicitly accepted by their autistic family and friends. Participants felt they could be their authentic, autistic self in their company. It's fab when we get together. Autistic space is so validating compared with the outside world. It's wonderful to see people stimming away without feeling self-conscious. Participant 9. I feel free as a bird. No effort is needed. I don't need to mask and I don't feel stupid if I don't understand something. I feel able just to ask. We're all always getting our words mixed up or losing them, and we lost the thread of our conversations. But we laugh at it. We all do it and we all get it. Participant 3. The language above was echoed in many participant responses who used words like genuine and accepting to describe their experiences. End of quote. I would say once again that fits the experiences with me. Back at the education school I went to, autistic people just accepted each other for who they are. Like, say, when it comes to one-way conversations, even though the other individuals wanted to talk, and sometimes I wanted to talk, we were able to just listen instead to the one-way conversation, and we were able to recall that sometimes we did one-way conversations, and that we actually enjoyed it, so we wanted the other to enjoy it as well. So it seems that autistic groups of people are willing to put other people's needs and desires before their own. In an article called Autism, Autonomy and Authenticity, which I will include in the description, Elisabeth M.A. Späth and Karin Jongsma say in the article, I quote, "Some have assumed that autistic people are not self-aware and do not understand certain social practices, but there is evidence that autistic people are able to prioritise their own values and are able to make choices without being bothered by social commodities and peer pressure." Brownlow describes, for example, how autistic people mock non-autistic behaviour patterns, like placing much focus on social standing by comparing oneself with. According to Shelley, autistic people, for example, do not identify themselves with their gender from early age onwards, as a category of making sense of their character and place in society, in contrast to many non-autistic children. Autistic people do not simply accept categories and conventions for the sake of being socially accepted. Simultaneously, it is very important to autistic people to have a meaningful task that relates to them as individuals. Some argue that contributing to society with their abilities and personality is a key to happiness for them. These examples illustrate that autists are able to, and even prefer to, give their life a certain direction and spend their time with goals and values that are in line with what they value. Autists seem to be less prone to be influenced by habits or options others embrace, which makes them authentic and better guardians of their own interests than non-autists. End of quote. All these claims perfectly describe me. For example, where the study said autistic people mock non-autistic behaviour patterns, I do because the so-called social person, so-called normal person, so concerned about how they are seen socially, is basically hypocrisy. Most of the non-autistic people I see are just plain hypocrites who try to justify their hypocrisy. I do not care a bit about what society thinks about me. It's more important to me that I do what my conscience tells me is the right thing to do, not what society tells me is the right thing to do. I know non-autistic people know they are in the wrong because they try to justify their behaviour. Justice is only involved if someone has done something wrong. If no one did anything wrong, there will be nothing to be justified. The excuses give it all away, that they chose to do the wrong because the wrong is what's seen as socially desirable. This is why I do not just adopt social values, because I know that social values are not all moral. History makes it plain clear, socially desirable behaviours are not inherently moral, such as racism, sexism, ableism, slavery, burning women at the stakes thinking they are witches, the eugenics movement, the Nazi Holocaust, were all socially significant behaviours and were condoned by non-autistic people because most non-autistic people are just plain hypocrites who can't hold up their own moral values against social norms, while autistic people have no difficulty sticking to what their conscience tells them is moral. For black and white thinking, I see everything as either right or wrong because I don't try rationalising or justifying that which is wrong, including my own wrongdoings. I don't try making up excuses. When I do something wrong, I always feel so guilty and disgraced with myself, sometimes even too harsh on myself personally. There's been a lot of research put into the microbiome. Research has shown a definitive relationship between what are currently called autism symptoms and the microbiome. This only backs my theory up further, as it suggests the symptoms are because of gut problems and not autism. My overall theory is that autism is a condition of authenticity, a stronger will for someone to live as their authentic self instead of having the tendency to be hypocritical around other people, pretending to be someone they are not. Autism comes from the Greek term autos, which means self. Then they added ism on the end to make it a disability. If we translate Greek to English, it would be called selfism, which could be defined as a stronger will to be one's true self. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. All the links to the studies which I quoted from will be in the description, and I would recommend reading through them if you would like to learn more. Thank you for listening.